Do we have everybody in, Judy? Should we go ahead and start? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Gerontological Society of America's Grant Chat, Introduction to the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs and Funding. I'm Dr. Gail Towsley, faculty with the University of Utah College of Nursing. I am joined by co-moderators Dr. Patty Slatum, a GSA visiting scholar and faculty with the Virginia Center on Aging at Virginia Commonwealth University, and Dr. Zachary Baker, faculty with the Edson School of Nursing and Health Innovation at Arizona State University. Before we begin today's program, I would like to provide a few logistical considerations. Please introduce yourself in the Zoom chat, and please keep your audio on mute during the event and submit your questions for the panelists at any resources that you have to share throughout the Zoom chat. The Career Conversation Grant Chat is being recorded and will be available after the event on the GSA website, along with a handout of the slides from today's program. Today's session was planned by the GSA Grant Writing Work Group. GSA's grant chats are designed to help you win grants through bolstering a broad range of grantsmanship skills, specifically tailored to your work as a gerontologist researcher. The goal of today's session is to share information about the congressionally directed medical research programs that oversees the investment of USA congressionally directed dollars to fund groundbreaking, high impact, high risk, high reward, meritorious research that targets critical research gaps to institutions across the globe. Looking to transform healthcare, CDMRP supports research in over 30 different programs focusing on diseases, disorders, injuries, and conditions, ranging from cancers and neurological disorders to orthotics and prosthetics. Many of the program priorities of the CDMRP are highly relevant to gerontologists. And now I would like to turn it over to Patty to introduce our esteemed speakers.
So to open today's program, I'd like to introduce our speakers. We are delighted to welcome Dr. Sarah Fontaine. She's the CDMRP peer-reviewed Alzheimer's Research Program and Neurotrauma Portfolio Program Manager. We have Dr. Tian Wang, who is also a program manager with the CDMRP. And we have Dr. Elham Mohammadi, who is an associate professor of health economics at the University of Michigan. And she is an awardee of the CDMRP grants program and will be sharing some of her experiences in that process as well. So our panelists have a presentation to share with us first, followed by a Q&A period. But please feel free to enter any questions that you have into the chat during the presentation time, and we will bring those for discussion during the Q&A period. And we also look forward to really learning more about these programs and how they can support research in gerontology. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Fontaine, to share with us some information about the programs themselves. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're very happy to be here to share with you about the CDMRP. I'll warn you that we love acronyms because we live in the Department of Defense. If there's an acronym that one of us says that we don't define, please let us know. It's like alphabet soup around here, and then you just get used to it and you don't notice it anymore. As Patty said, Tian and I are both program managers. So we are here to share with you a little bit, an overview of the CDMRP, some information on how to apply for our funding. And then we want to make sure we have time so that you can ask us any questions that you have. I'm going to actually turn it over to Tian to start. And she's going to start with the overview, and I'll get into a little bit more of the details on how to apply for our funding. Tian, just tell me when you want me to advance the slides, and go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for the organizer of this grants chat, and also thanks, Sarah, for the intro and laying the ground. And I do want to point to one thing on this slide, which is at the bottom to the right. For more information, visit our website. So there, if you browse, you'll find a lot of more details, and we're just gonna provide the basic. So next slide, please. So this is our CDMRP's vision and mission statement. And most importantly, the vision is transforming healthcare through innovative and impactful research. And the next slide has more information on how we will plan to achieve this vision. So next slide, please. Yes, thank you. And CDMRP stands for Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program. And there are the keywords here in our title is congressionally directed. So who we are, look at the green part, is CDMRP was started by Congress in 1992. And we manage, here says, focused biomedical research. And when we say focused, it means that the research that we manage, the programs that we manage, really have congressional directions to tell us what to focus on. And once the Congress give us specific programs and some directions, and then what we do is that we fund innovative and impactful biomedical research. This is done through, sending out funding opportunity announcement, peer review, programmatic review, and that's the how on the bottom, 2-tier review process. And in this, we involve scientists, clinicians, consumers, but also other stakeholders. The grants we give goes to basically anybody who you're eligible to apply if you're eligible to apply for federal funding like NIH. So we are funding not only investigators at American universities, but also companies. Companies sometimes can apply for federal funding, but we're also funding some teams abroad. For example, we have scientists from like Canada, UK, Australia, Israel. And as long as you are eligible to apply for NIH funding, you are eligible to apply to us. And our goal is the why. Our goal is to accelerate research, to advance cures, improvements, and breakthroughs. And we believe that we complement the NIH approach. And why do we say that? I think the next slide will give you some clue. Okay, so here are some of our hallmarks. Most of you probably are familiar with the NIH model. NIH model is basically investigator-driven, most part. And R01, there are different levels of funding, different mechanisms, but mostly it's investigator-driven, peer review-driven. And the NIH is also very, very comprehensive. NIH has more than the mission of funding research. It also trains the next generation of scientists. It has a lot of also outreach, education, clinical supporting duties. And CDMRP has a different task and different way to operate. And so the first is our funds are added by Congress as a targeted fund. So the funds are used for specific purpose as described, directed by Congress. And we are more, in general, we're more risk tolerant than the NIH. And there are also some kind of research that are likely to be received worse than NIH than us. For example, NIH focuses more on hypothesis-driven, and for CDMRP, if it has value but not hypothesis-driven, it probably has a better chance than us. And we do coordinate with other funding agencies, not just NIH, but also VA and also private funders to avoid duplication. And our funding opportunity, as I said, is publicly announced and is available to investigators, not just in the US, but also in other countries. And most of our programs has one program cycle a year, although some of our bigger programs have more than one cycle. So this is program specific. And in this regard, this is different from NIH. NIH usually have multiple program cycles a year. And we use a two-tier review process that's recommended by the National Academy of Medicine. And the two tiers, I believe we have information on that later, so we'll get to that later. And another key point is participation by consumers, which will be on the next slide. But before we move on, and I want to say this is very important, is that our program is very agile. We adapt our program's vision and research investment strategy annually by reviewing what has been funded, what are the breakthroughs, and we really adjust what kind of focus we will propose for the next year. And we also are not entirely rely on peer review score for funding recommendation. As I said, we have a two-tier review process. The peer review the scientific score, but when we make funding recommendations, it considers not just the scientific merit, but also other considerations like meeting program intent, impact in the context of overall program intention, congressional intention. So together, this means that we don't have a pay line like NIH. So we can target specific areas of research. We don't follow a pay line, and combine these two combined. This means that our research is not as investigator-driven as NIH. It is program-driven. And in this regard, I tend to think that our programs can act like special forces as opposed to NIH would be the regular army. They need to do everything, but special forces goes out and do very specific things, and hopefully very efficiently and complement the regular army. Okay, so next slide, please. Consumers are extremely important to us. It cannot be overemphasized, the importance. And the top of the slide gives you two main things at why consumers are the key. And then the bottom, the consumers are the true north and foundation of the CDMRP. This we say all the time because it's true. So first of all, if there's no consumer, there is no CDMRP. All CDMRP's funding comes from grassroots consumer efforts. Consumers go to, by consumers, I meant patients, caregivers, family members, and advocates who may not be a patient or family member, but really feel that they want to, they see the suffering of the patients and they want to do something. So consumers go to the Hill to advocate for funding for specific areas. And without that, there is no CDMRP programs. So for that is very important. But also throughout the process of our program cycle, consumers are involved. We involve consumers in setting the vision of the program, the investment strategy of the program. We involve consumers in the peer review. We involve consumers in the programmatic review that makes funding recommendations. Basically, we work with consumers throughout the way in executing the programs. And so it gives you some numbers. Just the last fiscal year 21, more than 700 consumers served on our peer review panels and 83 served on programmatic review panels, which makes funding recommendations. Next slide, please. So continuing on that, and this is the different stages in our program cycle where the consumers serve, and this gives you a little bit deeper dive into how they are involved. So they participate in stakeholders meetings, vision setting meetings. They help screen the pre-applications to decide which ones we invite to submit for applications based on their understanding of the program and based on their input on what kind of projects are of the most interest. And they support our peer reviews. Every peer review panel has 1 or 2 peer reviews. Every application has consumer to provide input. And let me tell you, the experts, the scientists really value their voice. And it's it's every single year, every peer review panel, I will hear the scientists, peer reviewers tell the consumer reviewers how much they learned when they have the opportunity to hear the voice of someone who either suffers from the disease or condition, or cares for someone who suffers from the disease or condition. It really provides a perspective from that angle, but also it reminds the scientists why they're doing what they're doing. So basically providing, a guidance and inspiration. And consumers involved in programmatic review, where the funding recommendations are made. And during award execution, they also participate on research teams as, for example, subjects, or some of our programs have award mechanism that asks that if you're doing clinical research involving human subjects, consumers have to be involved in the design of such research and has to be involved in the monitoring of these research to make sure that they're done in a way with deep consideration of the consumer's needs and wants. Okay, next slide, please. And this is the list of our programs as recommended by, approved, not recommended, as approved by Congress for FY23. And the total is a really big number. It's $1.52 billion. And it is among, if you compare that to NIH Institute, it will make us one of the bigger NIH Institute. On the other hand, this money is really spread out. So there are many programs. There are more than 30 programs listed here. And some programs are bigger. For example, the peer-reviewed medical is our biggest and has $370 million in FY23 appropriation. Some programs are small. For example, I think the smallest is the top one, the alcohol and substance abuse use disorder, has $4 million annual appropriation in FY23. And some of these programs, I believe, would be of interest to the GSA. And of course, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, those are obvious. And peer-reviewed medical has topics that are specified by Congress every year. So many of these topics could be also of interest to the GSA. And I was just talking to Judy about hearing restoration, which is a program that I manage. Hearing restoration focus on basically acquired hearing loss that include hearing loss due to noise or due to aging. They have very similar mechanisms. They probably cause for similar treatment. And because we know hearing loss is a big thing among seniors, so this program could be of interest. But there are others. And basically, if you browse our website and look at the programs, when they fund the scope, you get a better idea about what could be applicable or could be related to your research interest. Another point I want to make about this slide is these numbers and the list are not carved in stone. Some of the programs have been, part of CDMRP for many years. For example, breast cancer research program was our founding program. The first program that's the program that started CDMRP. That has been there every single year, and you sort of can think it will exist, but not all programs are like that. We've had programs that are either added or dropped out. And depending every year, because every year Congress has to say they want a certain program to be included. And if they don't say, it's not included. So the programs, some of the programs come and go. That's one thing, but also the dollar amount also changes. Every year Congress tells set in the budget how much money each program is going to get. Sometimes they add money, sometimes they take money away from a program. And just to give you an example from myself, hearing restoration program, last year our budget was $10 million. This year was cut in half to $5 million. So all these decisions, CDMRP are not involved in. This is a congressional process, and this is based on two things. Based on what the advocacy that was the Congress received, how many people, whether someone was advocating, how well is the advocacy, but also depending on the discussion that happens at the appropriation committees at the Congress. So this is a process that happens on the Hill between advocates and Congress and between congressional members. But the result is that the list of the programs could change and the appropriation amount could change. Next slide, please. And here we also use a term called core funding. So CDMRP receive on the blue line says congressional special interest, and CSI is what we call CDMRP funding. Congress has special interest in, say, Alzheimer's disease, and they specify that, and they say this goes to this program, that's CSI funding. And there's also core funding. Core funding are planned by DOD through specific budgeting processes. This is a very complicated process, requires specialized people, and they are requested by the DOD. So DOD have offices submitting their requests for budget, and they consolidate that. They go through the chain of command. They make that request and send it up, and that will be in the president's budget. And the president's budget, as many of you know, goes to Congress for further discussion. So DOD has core funding. Some of that also has medical research, but I don't think it has Alzheimer's disease, for example. But DOD has some core funding for biomedical research that are of particular interest to the DOD. And then that is in the president budget. And then the CSI budget are not in the president budget. It is added by Congress based on what they hear from the advocates and based their own discussions. Two parts. They're both managed by the DOD, but there are very big differences on where they come from and what are the directions, and that will decide how they're managed and what the scope of those research that can be supported. Next slide, please. And this is a busy slide. This is a diagram of our program funding cycle, and each program has something similar to that. And you don't need to worry too much about reading everything on this slide. It's very busy. What I want you to bring your attention to is, you see there is a oval in the center says programmatic panel, and we can use that as a link to point you to the key events. So the first between the program cycle, program panel and the cycle itself, you see it goes to vision setting and also stakeholders input meetings. So programmatic panel conduct vision setting meetings, sometimes in conjunction with stakeholder meetings. And that is a key event in the program cycle. And there's another slide afterwards on that. This is to decide on each year's investment strategy. And then after that, we release funding, the program will release funding opportunities. We see pre-applications, and there are two types of pre-applications. I think Sarah probably will go into that. And if the pre-application is pre-proposal, and then there's something called pre-application screening. That's another thing that the programmatic panel will put input on. And then we receive application, go through peer review, and then you see programmatic review, programmatic panel conduct programmatic review to make funding recommendation. After that, everything is handled internally by the program, mostly internally, in collaboration with our partners at contracting office to manage the award. And so what the investigators mostly, the applicants mostly are involved in is from the pre-application received to full application received. And then once they are recommended for funding, they will know the next part of what happens on this slide, the award management part. Next slide. Oh, by the way, so the different programs have a different timeline. What I meant is that, the time by which a program releases funding opportunity, that is different between program and program. So even though we all follow the same program cycle, this kind of diagram, but the time, the key dates are going to be different from program to program. And that is something that you can check our website, or you can subscribe to our funding opportunity and news, and then you'll receive those information. So just 2 more slides for me. The vision setting meeting is where the investment strategy for that fiscal year, for that program cycle, is decided. So this is a meeting of the programmatic panel. The program manager, like Sarah and me, we will call the programmatic panel together for this meeting. And we will review the congressional language, and we will collect and discuss inputs from leaders and stakeholders, including consumers. But also stakeholders can include clinicians who knows what are, for example, what are really sorely needed and what is some great opportunities. And so we review the current research landscape and also current funding landscape. Funding landscape would come from funders, for example, NIH. NIH will tell us what they're funding, what they have funded. VA will tell us the same, and other funders that are operating in the same program area will give us information on that. And a research landscape is basically what's the state of the science, and this information we can get by consulting the programmatic panel members who are often subject matter experts on that, but also looking at our own portfolio to see what are the current cutting edge research. And so together at the end of the day, the panel will recommend an investment strategy, which consists of what award mechanism will be used for this program cycle, what is the dollar amount for that award mechanism, what is the duration, like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and what are the focus area, and any other recommendation that goes into how we're going to solicit research proposals in this program cycle. Next slide, please. And so this is a little bit more on award mechanism. As I said, it's recommended by the programmatic panel. And there are 2 types mainly for us. One is called program announcements, or PAS. And the other is called program-specific broad agency announcements, or BAS. And most of the programs use PAS. BAS is very, very specialized. I don't know if Sarah will plan to release a BA, but she can tell you about that. And so those are the types, but then within that, there are the award mechanism can differ in many regards, like in the phase of the research and in whether it allows clinical research or not. So whether it's preclinical or clinical, and they can differ in focus areas. Sometimes a program will have the same focus area for all award mechanisms in a year. Sometimes they're different. And they can differ of course, in dollar amount, but also period performance. These you will need to look into the award mechanism once they're released. But usually there is also a pre-announcement that has a synopsis on the program, on the award mechanism that a program is going to give, and what are the key elements. And the bottom half of this slides give you some examples of the diverse award mechanisms that have been used by CDMRP's programs. And, for example, the initial concepts, we have concept awards, we have hypothesis development awards, and then we have early ideas awards, we have preclinical and translational awards, clinical trials, team science, and these are different categories. And then the bullets are the names of some of the awards. But I want to say this, just looking at the names, you will not be able to completely guess what are the key elements, what are the important things of an award mechanism of the program you're interested in. You will need to read the program announcement in detail. And I would say especially focus on one of the sections in the earlier part of the program announcement called award information. And that part really will help you understand what are the intents of this award mechanisms, what are the key features. Even the name of Translational Research Award, the key elements will differ from program to program. I think I've talked enough. I'm going to hand things over to Sarah.
All right, thank you, Tian. So I want to make sure that we have enough time so you can ask any of your questions. I saw there was already a couple of questions in the chat. I threw in a couple of comments. So forgive me if I speak quickly. A lot of this information is on our website, so I'm going to provide you sort of a high-level overview of this. So the first notification that you're going to get that there will be an upcoming funding opportunity by one of the CDMRP programs is that pre-announcement. We put them on our website. So if you go to cdmrp.health.mil, one of the first things that you're going to see is a banner on the front page, and it will either say funding opportunities or pre-announcements. The pre-announcement is sort of we've gotten our recommendations from the panel, we've set up our mechanisms and sort of how much those are going to be, what the investment strategy looks like, and we're going to send it out to you as soon as we can so that all the investigators can get a jump start on planning their projects and how they might be framing that grant to go to that program. Once the funding opportunities are live, they'll be posted on grants.gov, the CDMRP website. We blast them out through eBRAP. And so eBRAP is our portal where you can sign up for notifications to sort of be the first person to know that the funding opportunities are live. And also it gets an opportunity to have other sorts of communication with the programs. And then for those broad agency announcements, which I don't think we have enough time to go into how interesting they are, those are posted on sam.gov as well. So the easiest way to find the funding opportunities, honestly, is our website. So I've given Patty a couple of web addresses that she's going to drop into the chat for us so that you guys can quickly navigate there should you have any questions. So I spoke to this a little bit. This is just kind of how you can subscribe to our funding opportunities. Again, that website I gave to Patty to share with you all. Just sign up through the listserv. And for example, this morning, I sent out an eBRAP blast about my pre-announcements for the FY23, the upcoming funding opportunities for the peer-reviewed Alzheimer's program. So if you were signed up, you got those in your inbox already. If anybody's interested, of course, I will share. That's not a problem. But this really is the best way to get that information as soon as possible. So I just want to talk a little bit more about this two-tier process, because this is a little bit unique to our organization. So I want to give you a little bit of a synopsis. Tian touched on it, but I do want to emphasize that we have both scientific peer review, and then we have a second level review of our programmatic panel, that advisory panel, which is made up of consumers, scientists, clinicians, and other stakeholders, which may include VA, NIH, or private funders. We don't operate on a pay line, so we look at each application on its own merit, gets a score for peer review, and then it goes to programmatic review. So I would like to kind of point out the difference with the programmatic review is that this is where we are comparing applications to applications. During peer review, there's no comparison. During programmatic review, we do compare because we're looking for fit within the program's vision, mission, the portfolio balance, and sort of what we think, what came through and what is really meeting a need, or maybe a need that we didn't know that existed. So there's no pay line, there's no cut line. The discussions are usually a day to 2 days long, depending on how many applications we have to review. And we're really looking for that right mix of applications that really hit intent, impact potential, and relevance to the program's mission. So we don't fund a continuation funding. So the neat thing about CDMRP is we're going to give you all your money up front. So we get year-to-year money. Congress appropriates us an amount of money each year. And that's what we got. And as you can, as Tiana alluded to, sometimes that changes. So in order to make sure that each project is funded fully, we obligate all of that money to that project. So if you've applied for a project and it's $1 million and you're awarded it, all that $1 million is yours. There's nothing there's no recompeting each year for it. That entire pot of money is yours for the research. So I just wanted to kind of make those couple of things. We have a lot more information, including a video about the two-tier process if you want to go into it in a little bit more depth. But this sort of gives you that overview, kind of what the difference between the two levels of review is. So when the program manager writes that funding opportunity announcement, we add in everything that you need to know to apply and everything that we're looking for. And it's an arduous document, which is usually somewhere between 50 and 60 pages. It is just as much fun to write as it is to read. I promise you that. But really what we're looking at is program goals. We're telling you, these are the topics the program is interested in funding this year. This is the intent of the award. Maybe an award requires prospective enrollment of human subjects. Maybe there's no human subjects allowed for the award. This is all described in the funding opportunity announcement. We'll talk about all the required elements. We give you all of the review criteria, both peer review and programmatic review, so you understand what we're asking you to write to. Deadlines are contained in there, any funding limits, and all the requirements for eligibility. All of that is found in this document. So like the slide says, the thing that every program manager sings whenever we're talking to anybody is read the announcement carefully. We really do write everything that we want and need in the announcement. And that's why they're so big, because we want to make sure everybody is very clear on what we're looking for and everybody has that same opportunity for all of the information. Again, it's a big one, but it's very, very important to read the announcement thoroughly and carefully. You can find more information about the program, who you're interested in applying to, by going to our program pages. Each program has its own web page. There's news and highlights. You can see sort of what type of funding has been supported in the past. You'll see information on who our programmatic panel is, and you'll see who our peer reviewers have been in the past. Everything that we fund is then publicly available. So there's also on our website, you can go in and look at all of our previously funded applications. You'll find all the publications associated with those, and you'll find abstracts. This is a really good thing to dig into if you're interested in understanding kind of what the focus of the program has been, and sort of what types of research has been really attractive to that program in the past. We also have a number of webinars. So if Tiana and I weren't enough for you and you want to watch more interesting viewing about the types of opportunities we have, sort of diving into how we do team science awards, how we do clinical trial awards, what types of early career investigator opportunities we have, pro tip, a lot. We have all of these published onto our website. So you will be able to go to our website and find all of this information handy to watch while you're eating lunch, I would say. So I just want to go over a couple of strategies for success, being mindful of time. The most important things that we're looking for are relevance to the program's goals, making sure the work that you've proposed meets those program goals, making sure that it's working within the guidance in that funding announcement. And we're looking for things that are solving problems sooner. Sooner is completely relative to each program, but we're really looking for things that are going to benefit people. That's really at our core, and a lot of what we're concerned about is we're talking to these consumers every time that we're reviewing. We talk to them routinely, and it's really motivating to look for that impactful research. We want innovation. We're not interested in funding incremental science. We do not do resubmissions. We're interested in moving the needle forward. And really one of the most important things too is we're going to look pretty hard at feasibility. So your idea might be great, but if you don't have a way to approach it with the right collaborators, making sure you have access to populations, to the people you need to, making sure that you've done the biostats that you need to, your proposal won't do as well. So feasibility is a huge thing for us. So please make sure that you're kind of checking through the program announcement for what kind of details we'll be looking at for feasibility. And like I said, it's all there. And a couple of other things. All of the timelines and deadlines will be posted in the funding opportunity announcement. So if you're going to be collaborating, keep that into account. We don't have flexibility on the cutoffs. So if the cutoff, for example, is 11:59, that's what we got. It's 11:59. We don't have that flexibility to accept late proposals. Occasionally, we understand, like, for example, if a hurricane hits you, we can sometimes get approval from our grants officer to extend a deadline, but we can't accept anything after the deadline. And just sort of as a matter of course, make sure that you're writing your grants as clearly as possible. And remember that different parts of your application are going to have different audiences. So what you write for a technical reviewer may not be the same thing that you would want your consumer reviewer to understand. So we'll say in the PAW which sections need to be written for a lay audience. And those are the ones that our consumer reviewers are going to read. And that will really impact how your application is received. So bear that in mind when you're writing your grants. And this is my last slide. So I want to make sure we've got some time for questions and answers. We put everything, and I mean everything, on our website. So if you need any more information, check out our website. But I hope this was helpful, opening up a new avenue possibly for supporting your research programs. I'm happy to take any questions that you have in our remaining time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for that. That was super informative. CDMRP was not on my radar as a funding mechanism in the past, and I can definitely see kind of how it should be in the future. That focus on innovation, especially, the higher risk stuff seems like, oh, I could push this your way if the appropriate announcement comes out, as opposed to pushing it towards more typical funder like NIA. I guess kind of one of the benefits for those of you attending live is that you can ask your questions and we can pose them to our panelists here live. And so there was one question in the chat that came up talking about a large project funded through PCORI, where they're doing some comparative effectiveness work, but PCORI doesn't do interventions. And I saw that you did mention that you do some clinical trial funding, but specifically this person was asking if you might partner to fund intervention components of a research project that is otherwise funded elsewhere through PCORI for that.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of examples that I can speak to. So we have in the past co-funded proposals. So there's a couple of big projects that we have co-funded with the VA, for example. Often our investigators are leveraging an ongoing effort, but looking at let's say a veteran population. So one of the ones that I'm thinking of right now, there's an ongoing NIH study, and then they added a veteran cohort. So there are ways to apply for one of our grants, possibly for an interventional arm. There are lots of clinical trials at CDMRP, leveraging your ongoing efforts. So again, we have to be careful about duplication, but we are very happy to to be cooperative in the funding space and to make sure that our resources are being used as maximally as possible.
Let me just add to that. So
Mhm.
if you're applying to a program and trying to fund the intervention part to an existing award mechanism that the program releases, basically you go through the same process. And it's unlikely that you will be given preference because it's funded by the other part is funded by PICOR. This is probably the most straightforward way. Another way which you have to talk to each program is whether the program are willing to release a joint announcement with PICOR. And then in this regard, they basically will say, we'll each put in this amount of money, and we'll be looking for projects that has two components. One component will be funded by the CDMRP, one component by PICOR and or other organization. And these are the criteria, and it's going to be publicly announced. Everybody will get to chance to apply. And it's not very likely that with something that's already ongoing and then bring this to CDMRP, say, hey, can you fund this without through another actual competition? So the two models I said is one, go through the normal competition, just separate, but knowing that you will exchange data. And the other is talk to the program manager to see whether it's a joint program announcement that will be, again, open to everybody, not just the people who are already doing this research.
Thank you so much for those great questions. I want us to kind of just check in with Elham a little bit, and if you could tell us a little bit about your experience as being a CDMRP awardee.
Sure. The first thing I want to mention, as Zach mentioned, it's DOD funding opportunities are kind of like a hidden gem. Not too many people, especially in academia, are aware of them. For some reason, I don't know, maybe some marketing, maybe these webinars like this would help, actually. So when I applied about 2 years ago for the spinal cord injury program, and I found out about it through a friend, just she knew that this is the area that I'm doing the research. So she sent me via email the funding opportunity, and I applied. Let me tell you about my experience. First of all, it's a very rigorous process. It's like NIH, and they do require actually way more documentation. So when you prepare for your proposal, give yourself enough time. They do have a statement of work, abstract in lay language, proposal, just so many, way more than NIH are involved. And since I applied and got awarded, I'm also reviewing for the DOD. It's a very, as I mentioned, rigorous process. And as Sarah mentioned, the relevance, impact factor, feasibility, all these issues are important, and you have to score the proposal accordingly. I've been very happy. They do require regular reporting, so I can see now why the feasibility is important. They wanted to see you progress, and that's important. I see more emphasis on the level of reporting after you get the award from DOD than I see from NIH. I got awarded with both, and I appreciate that. It keeps you on your toes. It, it's they wanted to see impact or the result of what you promised you're going to do, which is good. So there's a lot of accountability, which I appreciate from researchers. The other thing that I wanted to share from an academician, I know we are all, for those of us in the tenure track, we wanted to get funding, and I just want to share that for those of you who are in the tenure track and have to bring funding to your institution, DOD would be considered as very similar to NIH because they do provide that indirect funding that schools and institutions are looking for. So consider it just a different source. It's a federal funding as NIH, and your institution will consider that as well for your promotion. That's all I have to share.
Thank you so much. And we've had some good questions and responses in the chat. Are there other questions that people have? Zach, I'm sure you have one up your sleeve.
I've got half a dozen here. So I was kind of clicking through your links, and I just wanted to highlight for some people that I did see some stuff about funding rates, which I assume differs a lot between program, but like how many compliant applications you've had. I'd also like to hear you talk about the size of awards. So I can see how things are broken down, but is it possible that I have something that's RO1 level that goes into you, but also something that's RO3 level? Sorry, I think in NIH terms, obviously, but
that's okay.
Yeah,
we're fluent. We're fluent in translating that. So each program is going to have a different, even if the award mechanism has the same name, it will have a different funding level. So for example, there will be team science awards that range from $5 to $8 million. There will be RO1 comparable studies as well. Some programs do fund on sort of the R21 scale. So it really is program dependent. So for example, for the peer-reviewed Alzheimer's program, we have 3 funding mechanisms. One of them is $2.5 million. And the other 2 are $1 million. We also, and you'll find that there are also some other sort of options, such as partnering PI options. And so those can be really good because you have 2 investigators working on a problem, but each gets their own award. And so mine are specifically targeted for early career investigators or career transitions, but there are other partnering options as well. So I've seen things where one partner must be a clinician and the other partner does not need to be a clinician for some of the translational work. So it does vary greatly. As Elham mentioned, we do fund at the federally negotiated indirect rate for the institutions. So again, that does make institutions happy. So that's a good thing. And again, I just remember there's no pay line, and there's and that's really important to kind of bear in mind when you look at our funding rates. So again, we're funding for sort of the highest impact research that's going to fit our vision and mission. So that's really something to keep in mind when you're looking at the funding rates. They are what they are, but we don't adhere to them. So even if one year it's 20%, the next year, it's going to depend on how many applications we receive that are compliant, and really what fits the vision and the mission the best. Anything to add, Tian?
I think what you said is great, and especially the range of size of the awards. And I think one thing to note is that NIH has more like cookie cutter kind of award mechanisms, and one, you know all. And for example, if you're applying for RO1 for one institute, what's are the criteria, no matter where you apply, and what to write, how to prepare. And for us, it's different. It could be definitely different from program to program, but it also could be different from year to year for the same program, because the program may adjust something in the award mechanism. Even if it's the same title, it may adjust to something like focus area and like additional requirements. So for our awards, that's what Sarah said, really read the program announcement. And another thing is that even Sarah has a very interesting note in the chat. And so another thing is that even programs that you think, you fit, for example, they say, oh, I work on Alzheimer's, I can apply to peer review Alzheimer's. Not necessarily so. Look at her peer review Alzheimer's and really make sure understand what her program's focus is on, what the program are, because she's unlikely to fund everything under Alzheimer's, just like I don't fund everything under hearing restoration. And my other program is vision research program. I don't fund everything. That's simply because it's vision research. So understand the program's scope, understand what Congress asked the program to do, and understand based on that, what is the program's, goal and priority. That will really help you decide whether your research fit, which award mechanism it fits, or if the current one don't fit, can you come up with an idea that fit?
Mm-hmm.
So really, it needs more reading and needs more investment of your time in all regards, but I think it will be very rewarding once you get our award.
Well, I know we are getting to the top of our hour here, and I think we'll bring our session today to a close. I want to encourage everyone who's been listening to this or who will be listening to it through the GSA website to really consider whether this CDMRP might be a good fit for your research program. And it sounds like doing some digging, investigating those announcements that are coming out will be the way to help you to do that. Explore more fully these opportunities through the website. Take a moment to sign up to receive those notifications while that link is fresh in front of you, and see if this might lead to another great resource to support gerontological research. And please join me in thanking Drs. Fontaine, Wang, and Mohammadi for generously sharing their time, expertise, and perspectives with us today. We want to thank also the work group members who planned the grant chat, and thanks to all the participants for your questions. They really added to today's grant chat. I think we all learned a lot. And I also want to thank Judy Liu from GSA staff, who does all that behind the scenes coordination that makes all of this work so smoothly. So thank you, Judy. And we're going to send out a brief survey following the event. We encourage you to provide some feedback and help us in planning our future grant chats. And we hope that you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.